Across rural Thailand right now, many villages and locations are on the brink of transformation. As aging farmers choose to pass down their land, families face decisions that will redefine their futures. Right now, my own family is at a crossroads as Yai, our grandma, divides this piece of land here amongst the children and grandchildren. What the family decides next might decide whether the land stays in the family or it is sold off or it's transformed entirely. Many long-term subscribers will be quite familiar with the land here. I've shown it on the channel a number of times, mainly because my wife's dad used to actually live out here. All the land in this area, which you can see is in the dark brown, is actually my wife's family land. There are over 20 rai here, and this is the land that has now been divided amongst the children and the grandchildren. This land is predominantly rice field, but as you can see in the middle, there is a small shack that has been built where my wife's father used to live for a while, and it's got a small little pond as well. It just so happens that it was this piece of land, including a couple of rai around it, of rice field that was given to my wife. As you can see, it is quite a nice lush area in comparison to the other pieces of land which are surrounding it, which are basically just bare rice field. These have been sectioned off and divided amongst the children and the grandchildren, and it may well turn out, due to changing lifestyles and economics, future generations actually have no intention of farming this land at all. And this is not just something happening to our family. Researchers have already identified land fragmentation as a real issue in rural Thailand, especially in farming areas like the northeast and central Thailand. When land is divided into smaller and smaller pieces, it becomes harder to farm efficiently, harder to justify machinery, and harder to make the land productive. On paper, the family still own the land, but in practice, the land can become too small or too divided to work properly. This is when farmland slowly stops being farmland and becomes something else entirely: property, inheritance, or just an asset waiting for someone to make a decision. You don't have to live in rural Thailand very long to hear about squabbling and bickering between families when land is divided up this way. Who wants what, who has a claim to what, and setting the clear boundaries early on before sickness or passing away is quite important to stop family infighting. I'm sure many subscribers will agree, but actually keeping the land intact and holding on to it for many generations has a lot of benefits. Indeed, we've seen those benefits as Yai and my wife's father have had to make very difficult choices in their life as to not release the equity quick in order to pay for things that they needed and instead keep it for future generations. I sometimes wonder if the younger generations will have the patience and fortitude and long-term foresight in order to keep the land intact for their future generations. And that pressure is very real. Thailand still has one of the highest household debt levels in Asia. So when land is passed down, it can feel like security, but it can also feel like temptation. For one person, the land is family history. For another person, it is school fees, a motorbike, a car, debt repayment, or a way out of financial pressure. That is why land inheritance can become so emotional. It's not just about who gets what. It's about whether the family can resist turning a long-term security into short-term cash. And often, a lot of the younger generation don't even want to stay here in rural Thailand. There's not much for them. If they don't have a very large plot of land, it's difficult to farm, and work is thin here. Better they go to Bangkok and earn their money, and then why keep a patch of land other than for retirement? This is one of the biggest questions facing rural Thailand right now. Even if families keep the land, who is actually going to work it? The older generation still understands farming because they grew up with it. But the younger generation often has different ambitions, different expenses, and a different idea of what success looks like. One study found that the share of Thai farmers under 45 fell from around 30% in 2008 to around 19% in 2018, while farmers over 60 became a larger share of the farming population. So this is not just one family wondering what to do with a rice field. It is part of a wider change where the people inheriting the land are often not the same people who want to farm it. Over the years, I have spoken to a number of Thais, and those that sold off the land come to regret it. Even neighbours that have sold land have come to regret it later on. And others that actually kept their land intact find that they have somewhere to go in their old age and retirement, somewhere rent-free with low costs rather than staying in the city, which is getting ever more expensive. Now, within my family in particular, As always, there's very little drama. There is not much dysfunction in the family, and there are very, very rarely any arguments. People come together as a clan, as a tribe, as a community. The grandchildren are still too young to really decide what they want, and the older sisters all get on, they have a laugh and a giggle, and they decide who is going to get what. All this land is actually located around a 5 to 7 minute drive from our home. It is in distance where you can take care of it. It's not fenced in, there's no security here because there really is nothing to take on the land. And the surrounding land belongs to families that have known each other for generations, are indeed related in many ways. As I've said before on the vlog, many of the people in the village are my wife's family. Now, each family member is dealing with different economic situations. Damo's sister in Germany is relatively well off, especially compared to many Thais, as is her sister that lives in Bangkok. She has a number of patches of land already in different areas. So they will just sit on the land here. I believe they've been given 2 rai each. They will sit on it for years, let the land appreciate, perhaps sell it in very much down the line or give it to their children. I probably suspect they will give it to the children. There's been massive efforts made to keep this land in the family. I could go through all the situations now, but I can tell you that there has been medical situations that weren't paid for in order to keep this land. Dire situations that the family didn't have a lot of food to eat and they still kept the land. Situations where there was debts and they still managed to keep the land. It's been a hard-fought process to keep the land, and now the sisters that are relatively well off, they will not let their parents down by simply selling it away. This is why land can often carry more weight than money. Money disappears quickly. It can be spent, lost, swallowed up by debt. But land like this, if kept, can protect a family for generations. Once it's sold, it's usually gone forever. And that is what makes these decisions so serious. The people inheriting the land are not only receiving an asset, they are receiving the result of years of sacrifice from the generations before them. We also teach our boys that the land is very, very important to keep. We hope it's something that's going to be passed down from one generation to another to keep it, but you can't always guarantee what's going to happen. People will make choices and get into certain financial troubles, and you can never control it. That's why I think my wife's parents have waited so long. You don't want to give it to the kids when they're too young. There are other members of the family, though, that don't have a lot of money and may need to sell the land. And often the first right of refusal goes to other family members. So it will be offered to us as a family and we can say, okay, we'll pay you X amount for it. That keeps it within the family. And the chances are that the family will buy it from the family because nobody would want to let it go for the cheap prices that this farmland often goes for. It's hard to evaluate what the land is actually worth. It's all shenote. I think down the line you could be talking 300 to 500,000 baht a rai. And if not more, as the price of land goes up. As the area urbanizes, as there's more demand for land, it can go up. And so it's best to keep it within the family. Now, beyond our family situation, there is an aging population here in rural Thailand, as with many locations in the world. Less and less people are going into farming and choosing to farm. And that means as the land is sold off in different packets, it's not only changing the way families stay together, but changing the community and the village as well. One family sells, another family builds a house on rice land, another one rents out the field, another lets it sit empty. After enough years, the village still has the same name, but it no longer works in the same way. The World Bank has also pointed out that many rural farming households in Thailand are small holders, often facing insecure land tenure, climate shocks, rising costs, and debt. So when you combine small plots, aging farmers, debt and uncertain income, it becomes easier to understand why some families stop seeing the land as farmland and start seeing it as property. In many cases, people don't have a say about who the land is sold to and where the land goes. And so people could wake up one day and they have new neighbours. There's a hotel being built in what was traditionally agricultural land. The villages change and the communities change. This is an inevitable consequence of urbanization, of course, but it does affect communities and it can cause friction between the old original people that were here and the new neighbours, especially if they're doing something with the land that impedes on the work of others. Sometimes people irrigate the land, or they redivert water, or they put in boundary fences, and all this can cause friction with the native people to the land. As well as the challenge of breaking up these large areas of rice fields into smaller packets that are difficult to farm, there is also the issue of soil quality, The soil that is not being fertilized again and not having money spent on refertilizing it becomes deteriorated and unusable. Climate change is also having some impacts here. I have had some subscribers tell me that it isn't affecting them where they are, but certainly here, last year's yield was affected by changes in weather patterns. There are also pressures on farmers, such as cheaper rice imports or fluctuating prices. This makes it harder for the small plots to compete. And this is exactly why families might sell or repurpose the land. In the case of my wife and I, we don't really see this as a financial thing, like or speculate on the land and sell it down the line. It's more so seen as a family security asset. It's something that's seen as the children will have somewhere to live no matter what in the future. I also wouldn't rule out putting a small cabin here and having it as a chill out place. I don't think an Airbnb would work out here. I'm not sure how many people would want to come and stay in this area. Not much around, not much to see, but it's not ruled out for something for the future. What worries me more is what the grandkids might be forced to do down the line, or what other members of the family may have to do. Not that we couldn't purchase the land from them and solve the problem that way, but because then they would be without land. So the real question is not only who gets the land, the bigger question is what kind of future the land is being saved for. Is it still farmland? Is it family security? Is it a retirement backup? Is it somewhere the children can return to one day? Or is it just an asset waiting to be sold? And to be honest, in today's world, land could be one of the most important assets that the younger generation inherit. In many ways, if you have your own piece of land, you have an element of freedom that others do not. They're not subject to rent. They're not subject to council tax here. There's a small amount of tax to be paid on this kind of agricultural land. And so you're less at risk of getting into debt and into trouble through not being able to pay for a place to stay. You can grow food here. You can live here. And as the world becomes more unrecognizable and changes in ways that we cannot anticipate right now, land might be one of the most important assets that the younger generation have.